Hi there, welcome to Q&A Wednesday. Yeah, it's that time again already. Can you believe it? This month has gone really super fast. We're trying this from a different angle today. I'm kind of tired of my background. I'm working on that. But I have a really good topic today. And so I want to, this actually comes up quite frequently. I want to talk a little bit about drastic weight loss. I get a lot of clients that ask me whether or not, this can happen really fast. Like, hey, is it realistic to think that I can lose 30 pounds in 30 days? And if those of you that know my background and my values know that I don't think so. Like, yeah, you can, but there's some pretty extreme, things that can happen when you have a really drastic weight loss. So I know that most of you saw my picture that I posted. That was a before and after at my very, very heaviest, where I was at about 210 pounds and about 46% body fat. And then I also included one of, actually, to be honest, it was my first season competing and I was the very tiniest I've ever been in my whole life, about 110 pounds on stage. So that's a huge difference. That's about 100-pound difference. Granted, you have to know that was several years in the making. That was not an overnight success type of a deal. Here's my thought process on dramatic weight loss or drastic weight loss. I know that we're all looking for quick changes. We all want to see our results fairly quickly, but there's some definite downsides to and some side effects, if you will, to having a really drastic or a quick weight loss. So keep in mind, I remember when I first started working on getting healthy that, I would watch the seasons of Biggest Loser and be really inspired by their stories and by how quickly they were able to lose the weight and the huge amount of weight loss that they were having and the success they were having. But I didn't really know the background and the stories of how they were being treated by the producers and things like that. So since then, a lot of information and articles have come out regarding that, where there was some serious downsides to the way that they were choosing to be treated on the show, which was, of course, that they were sequestered in a situation where, they didn't have a lot of choice, exercising 5 to 6 hours a day. Yes, they were medically supervised, but a lot of choices that really didn't lead them to be able to keep up that kind of a regimen when they got outside of the Biggest Loser situation. So keep in mind that some of the things that they dealt with, you probably even saw some of the downsides to it. We'll talk about some of them in a minute here. Extra skin. There's, especially for people who are extremely out of shape, to try and work out in that way is not very healthy. There's some, even though the benefits can be extremely healthy, doctors will say that a certain amount of body percentage of fat lost can be extremely healthy, not when you're trying to do it in an extreme way. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about some of the downsides to dramatic weight loss. So, I think of dramatic weight loss as losing a pretty good size amount of weight in a very short amount of time. Most people who are trying to be healthy, even most doctors will say that, 1 to 2 pounds a week is very healthy. And I agree. And there's multiple reasons why I think that that's super important. And the first one is that, for people who choose to lose a lot amount of fat or a lot amount of weight in a very short amount of time, they're usually making some drastic changes. When it comes to things like not eating enough food, taking weight loss pills, exercising to an unreasonable degree, things that you can't maintain for the rest of your life in a healthy way. So I believe in being sustainable. Anything that you start now has to be sustainable for the rest of your life, because once you get that weight off, how are you going to keep it off? You can't just go back to the same habits that you had before and expect to have the same results or to be able to maintain that. So, whatever you do has to be maintainable. And so one of the biggest things that happen when people have a drastic reduction in their calorie intake is that your metabolism fights you on it. Your metabolism drops because honestly, if you're not eating the food, what is your body going to pull from? It doesn't know that you are dieting, right? It doesn't know the difference between a diet and starvation, and your body has been built to survive. So the first thing that it will do is your metabolism will drop. It actually can cause some serious issues with your thyroid, which produces your metabolism, the hormones that run your metabolism. So, for a lot of people, I've actually worked with people who've lost a good chunk of weight by not eating a lot of food. And before I'm willing to train them, we have to fix their metabolism. Your body has no way to build. It has nothing to pull from. It doesn't know necessarily that it's supposed to burn fat because one of the other things that happens, remember when we're losing weight, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're burning body fat. A lot of times that means a drop in muscle, right? Muscle atrophy. Your body can actually choose to burn muscle as fuel, and it will. Muscle is an expensive thing to keep. So when your body has to pull from something, it's going to pull from muscle, right? Because it takes extra calories to keep your muscle. It will burn that and become what we call catabolic, or in other words, it will cannibalize it. So big, huge downside to that. Another biggest reason why I really try to get my clients not to think in the drastic terms or in the short term is that you can't create habits in a short amount of time. We just talked about that anything that you do now has to be sustainable for the rest of your life, because it is a lifestyle. If you want to stay at a certain size or a certain leanness, you have to be able to live that way, right? We can't just say, hey, New Year's resolution, I'm done. Let's go back to what we were doing before, because you'll bounce right back to where you were. So habit changes don't come in a short amount of time. And honestly, I like to teach habit changes one at a time, right? I don't want my people to be overwhelmed. We start with things like, hey, drink more water. Okay, now you're doing that. Okay, hey, can you just track your food? Don't change anything yet, but just track your food. So thanks, Bruce. That's a great comment. I really appreciate that. So, the habit changes will come over time. If you try to implement too many changes all at once, the downside to that, and I hear this over and over again, is that as soon as a major obstacle comes about, you kind of throw your hands in the air and go, dude, I'm done. I can't do it. I can't maintain this. It's just not working for me. So, habit changes take time. I know that they say that 21 days, it takes 21 days to make a habit, but I'm going to tell you that lifestyle wise, it takes longer than that, because you're not just implementing one habit, you're implementing multiple habits in order to keep a healthier lifestyle. So that's a big part of it. The next one is, honestly, as someone who was a larger woman and has had multiple babies, your skin does not bounce back in a really quick manner. You have to allow that skin time to maintain and to shrink back to fit your skin, to fit your tissue. So, you can see some of those people, like I said, in The Biggest Loser, that rapid weight loss left a huge amount of skin that they have to do something about. And a lot of times, they result to surgery in order to tighten that up, maintain that. I know there's a show on TLC right now that talks about that. I believe it's called Skin Tight, where people who've had extreme weight loss from extreme, like we're talking hundreds of pounds, now have to deal with the excess skin that comes from that. And I even had to remove some excess skin. Like I said, 5 babies don't do very nice things to your body. So, allowing your skin to be able to bounce back. And of course, as the older we get, the harder it is, right? The less elastic it is. So we have to allow a little more time for that. Something else, I know that when we think weight loss and we think health lifestyle, we all think the physical portion of it. But there's a huge emotional management that we have to accomplish, and it's really tough to do in a very short amount of time. Now, I'm going to tell you, and I've mentioned this before, that obesity is not the problem, it's the symptom. It's the symptom of something larger, a larger problem. Most of us don't get obese because we just we just eat too much food. There's something behind it. We're using food for comfort. It can actually have a drug-like effect. We have addiction. It's a control issue. Same thing with food disorders like anorexia and bulimia. A lot of that has to do with control over something. This is the one thing that they have control over. So, there's an emotional side to this that can't be fixed in a very short amount of time. And to be honest, sometimes we even have to seek professional help in order to solve that. So, when we lose a huge chunk of weight in a very short amount of time, those issues don't get resolved. And if those issues don't get resolved, we go back to the issues and the problems that we had before. So again, there's definitely some things that over time we have to fix in order to make this a lifestyle, and emotional management is what is part of that. The other thing, and I've actually read multiple articles on this. Actually, I first kind of had my own theory and my own thoughts on this, and then since then I've read multiple articles on this. Your body uses fat to save your life in multiple ways, and you can think what you want. It is a storage unit, but what it does is it prevents you from multiple things. I mean, obviously a certain amount of fat is necessary to protect your organs. The problem is most of us, of course, overeat, and so our body uses that to store energy, right? But the other thing that it stores is toxins. Toxins from the air, toxins from the processed foods that we eat. So what happens when we start to burn those cells off or allow them to release the stored energy that are inside them, right? All of a sudden, all those stored toxins actually get recirculated throughout our bloodstream and can affect us in a huge way. So the reason why I kind of started to pay attention to this is that a lot of my clients within the first 2 months would get really, really sick, like to the point of being out of work for a week, maybe being down in bed for a couple of weeks. And it took me a little while to kind of figure out what was happening. And what it is that, again, as you burn off the fat, those toxins get re-released into your system. So again, your body will fight for survival. And one of the things that it does is we put those things in our bodies that they're not ready for. And again, processed food has a ton of them: additives, preservatives, dyes, colors, just preservatives. All that garbage has to be re-released into our system. And when our immune system's already at a disadvantage, whether we're building some muscle or we're just putting a new demand on our body it's not used to, our body has a really difficult time dealing with those toxins floating around in our system, and we can get really, really sick. So keep that in mind, that, you know, the slower that you do it, the more healthier that you do it, you can allow your body time to deal with the toxins as we burn those fat stores off. Okay. So we talked about that. Okay. So the other thing is, you know, I'm not a big fan of a lot of those diets that are very, very low carb or low food, low calorie, period. Of course, I don't believe that you should cut out any food nutrient unless there is something very, very specific medically. I don't believe that you should do any diet that cuts out a food group. I don't think that it's healthy, nor is it sustainable. To be honest, I like carbs. Get over it. I'm going to eat a certain amount of carbs. As a matter of fact, I'm going to eat a certain amount of things that I'm not going to make myself feel like I have to sacrifice everything. But on a regular basis, I eat very, very clean. But usually what happens when people are trying to lose weight in a drastic way is they restrict their calories to a point where it's unhealthy. And yes, I know that there are some medically supervised options out there. I'm still not a fan. Again, I really think that they can be done. Everybody can lose it in a way or get lean in a way that's sustainable and healthy. So why these are out there, it's a gimmick, and somebody's making money on it, to be honest. So things that can happen from losing fat and losing weight in a very quick and drastic way, debilitation. You know, your body doesn't function as well. And these are just the physical ones. We're going to talk about the mental and emotional ones in a second. We talked about muscle atrophy. You don't just lose body fat, guys. Your body has a priority system of how it's going to use things as fuel. And it's going to use muscle over fat. Okay, so keep that in mind. Muscle atrophy. Hey, for those of you that need to think about this, lower sex drive. Not a great option, okay? Most of us don't need that. How about multiple eating disorders? We talked about a lot of times, especially in a situation where we're not solving the problems. We can have body dysmorphia, which is where our bodies are not what we're not seeing the truth when we look in the mirror. We only see the negative portions of it. So again, that's kind of breaching into the mental and emotional portion of it, but it can happen. It happens a lot that people just are never happy with themselves. They're never happy with their results. So they try more and more drastic ways. And you know what? Honestly, starvation can end in death. That is not a good side effect. So when we're trying to lose it the weight in a drastic way, those are some of the physical downsides to it. But how about the mental and emotional downsides to dropping a good portion of weight in a very short amount of time? You can become extremely irritable. You know what? Honestly, do you really want to do that to your friends and family? Do you want to be unhappy all the time? That's not fabulous. So irritability, things like depression, definitely, because especially when you're missing certain nutrients and certain vitamins, your body actually will react in a negative way. How about just the ability to get there and stay there? You know, again, having unrealistic expectations and not being able to get where you want to go. Again, you have to be able to why not do it in a way that makes you happy and you can celebrate every step along the way, and do it in a way that you can do it for the rest of your life. The other thing is your body, like I said, your body has a survival mechanism. It will fight you every step of the way. You actually have something called hunger hormones. It's called ghrelin. It's your body's ability to help to try to make you eat. Like cravings, when people have really low calorie, low food diets, your body will crave food because you need to eat. It's a survival mechanism. So, if you're going to fight that, what usually ends up happening is you go for a certain amount of time and you just think, okay, well, I'm just going to do without food. I'm going to do without food so I can see the results. But usually what ends up happening is we binge. Right? And we binge on the wrong things. So what we originally thought would be a great idea ends up having the adverse effect of now we've just eaten everything that we can find in our freezer, our kids' candy stores, whatever. So, it's not a great idea in order to, like I said, why starve? There's no benefit to that. And some of my people fight me for a while when I first tell them how much they need to eat in the way of food, because they think, okay, but no, I heard that you eat less food. No, eat less junk. Eat less junk, eat the right things, eat them at the right time of days, and teach your body that you're going to feed it. There are ways to teach your body to also burn fat as fuel, but you have to actually have a metabolism to do that. So, that's part of it. Also, one of the things that you give up, if you choose to just give up food in general, you're going to be sacrificing some of the things that you actually enjoy. Eating with friends and family, a food that you might enjoy here and there. Guys, I like chocolate cake. I don't eat it all the time, but I do eat it. Jenny's asking about intermittent fasting. Okay, I totally have my opinions on this. The problem with intermittent fasting are there's some pretty intense rules that have to be involved with that. And the problem is most people don't follow them. They just think, well, I'm just not eating. I can see the benefits, and to be honest, when we sleep, we do actually perform a type of intermittent fasting which cleanses our system. Honestly, I just don't like extremes, and I feel like that is another extreme. I don't have a problem with people fasting for like a day here and there, maybe doing a cleanse for a day, but there has to be a purpose behind it, and you have to be prepared. There's some downsides to fasting, more than a few hours. So we already do a form of fasting that usually keeps us sensitive enough, but there are ways to do it to keep your body sensitive and keep it moving and help your metabolism without having to go to that quite of an extreme. I really feel like if you're going to do it, you need to do a lot of research on it, and then really decide whether or not it's the right thing for you, because you still have to get a certain amount of calories in a certain time period. It just becomes harder to do. So Jenny, you'll have to read more on it. We can talk about it later, because honestly, I had to do some research. I had a client ask me about it once, but really the problem came down to she just was doing whatever the hell she wanted to. So that was a whole other ballgame, but we can actually have that conversation if you'd like to. Okay. Okay. I write notes. I do. I write notes. It's how I remember that. And for all of you that know, I do have prep brain at the moment. So I don't admit that much on social media because I find it annoying. To be honest, I don't care that you guys are on prep brain and that it's hard. I already know that it's hard. I don't need to post it all over Facebook. So if I look like I'm kind of stupid some days, yeah, I'm having a moment. But I'll get through it. I'll get over it and move on. I've done this enough times. I know how it rolls. So, okay. So we talked about, missing the foods that you love. Here's another one. When you have a drastic weight loss or a drastic physiological change, you actually have to learn to become a new person. And I know that sounds so weird, but when you look in the mirror and you don't recognize who you see, that can be extremely disconcerting. I've actually talked to people that was a huge struggle for them. I actually lost the majority of my weight over the period of almost a year. And so granted, I had a little more time to kind of focus on the changes and things that were happening, and pay attention to what was going on and really deal with some things. And granted, I'm not even the same person now that I was 7 years ago when I first lost, the good chunk of my weight loss. But, even now I've kind of had to feel my way through it and figure out who I'm becoming, because certain things, like I'm treated differently than I was before. It is what it is, and not always positive. I've actually had people make fun of me, or talk mean, like I'd won the lottery or something. I grew up like this. I work hard. I lift. I prioritize my time. I do it for me. I don't do it for anybody else. but I'm treated differently. Like I said, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in not such a good way. Also, and I found this statement really interesting that I read, you actually go from being invisible to being visible, and you have to be okay with that. You get unwanted attention from interesting places. Trust me, I've blocked a lot of people on Facebook. If you're not comfortable, it's kind of nice when you want to be incognito and go somewhere and do something and not be bothered. But all of a sudden now you get way more attention, and sometimes I don't want it. So there's definitely a different, people think that I'm intimidating. You know what? They don't know my heart. Yes, I know I have the resting gym face thing going on. Actually, I call it my focus face. I try really, really hard to make sure that I'm smiling at people, especially when I'm in locations of new people or working at my job. I don't scowl on purpose. It's something I've worked on for a very long time. It's just part of me. But again, it's part of it. People who know my heart know that I'm a huge nerd and I love people. I'm actually an introvert. I've told a lot of people that this week and they can't believe it, but I am. I'm an outgoing introvert. So I actually get my energy from being alone. So kind of fun. I do well, just fine with people. I love people. I love people till they prove to me I shouldn't. But there are times when I just want to be by myself, and that's an okay thing. I've had 42 years to come to terms with that. So keep that in mind. You do become a different person, and you have to be okay with that. You also, you have to do a lot of shopping along the way. All of a sudden, clothes don't fit anymore. They don't fit the same way anymore. Again, I'm not the same body that I was 7 years ago. So the clothes that fit me when I first lost the majority of the weight, even if I'm the same size or actually even the same weight, this year I've built a booty. I have way bigger shoulders. Things just don't fit the same. So you're pretty consistently having to shop, and it actually can get kind of expensive. So, I kind of use it as a reward to myself to go shopping. However, I don't really have enough time to go shopping anymore. So it has to kind of be a plan and a reward. But a couple of side notes before we call it good for tonight. I know that in certain situations there can be some dramatic or drastic weight loss where it's kind of warranted. Anyone who's been through gastric bypass can tell you that there's some pretty quick changes and big changes that come fast. But before you think that it's all, sugar and roses and wonderful, there's a whole host of other obstacles that can come alongside that. Because remember, gastric bypass is a surgery, and with any surgery comes risk and some extra things that people have to deal with. It's not all fun and games. So, even with the surgery, you still have to have some habits in place, because you can't eat as much at a time. There's definitely some repercussions when it comes to how your body responds to it when you can't, you try to put something in your stomach that it doesn't want. So, it's not a quick fix. There's a lot of thought and research that should go into that. Also, things like supplements. When people choose to use prescription medication, all of you probably remember phentermine, fat burners, all these other things, all of those can have some side effects, and you got to know what the risks are involved with that, and how your body might respond to that. So it's not always as great as it seems. Hey, if there was a magic pill, we'd all know about it, right? Because we're still all asking for the secret to weight loss success, and it doesn't work that way. So all in all, I feel like there's way more downsides, way more risks and problems that can be involved when we choose to go the route of having a drastic and quick weight loss. And I don't think it's worth being miserable in order to get to that point. I think we need to do so in a way that's healthy, it's sustainable. We can do it for a lifetime. Ask anybody that's been through it. We know that it has to become a lifestyle, and we have to be okay with who we become and what it takes to get there. There has to be that balance of, I can still enjoy some of the things that I love, and I can still be healthy and happy at the same time. So hopefully that worked for you. Hopefully I gave you some great answers. Again, if you have questions or comments, please, you can reply down below, or you can email me at melissa@fillmorefitness.com. I love getting responses. I love getting feedback, and more questions. I love it. I want to teach everybody the right way to do it. I want everybody to, why not? You know what? If I can do it, anybody can do it. That's why I do what I do. So have an incredible evening, and we'll see you next week.